Good morning, beloveds. Welcome to Unity of Bellevue. I am Reverend Marla Mason, and it's a blessing to serve as your minister this day and every day of my life. I am so grateful to be here. In the Flow of Life is our book of the month, and I am reading from page 102. The author of this book is the beloved Unity minister, Eric Butterworth. He is quoting in this section from the master teacher, Khalil Gibran. You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes those gifts unwholesome. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give. As in yonder valley, the myrtle tree breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks. And from behind their eyes, God smiles upon the earth. I'm going to read through today's affirmation once, and then I'll invite you to join me. Alive with passion and purpose, I boldly live in the spirit of abundance, aligned with the flow of life, effortlessly expressing my gifts. I give and receive freely, growing my gifts and growing in God. And so it is. Please stand and join me. Alive with passion and purpose, I boldly live in the spirit of abundance, aligned with the flow of life, effortlessly expressing my gifts. I give and receive freely, growing my gifts and growing in God, and so it is. Isn't it great to have them around? I'm so grateful for my life. How about you? You know, a lot of people have had a part in making my life what it is. A lot of people. Shall I go handheld?
You're going to go old school.
We're going to go old school. Actually, I have to hold the mic. All right, good morning. You know, a lot of people have made my life what it is. How about you? Sometimes we like to think we do this alone. I know I like to think, oh no, I did it. I'm good. I don't need you. But you know, the fact is, without certain people in my life, people that I like to think of as heroes sometimes, my life maybe wouldn't amount to much. You know, one of my big heroes is my mom. My mom did some pretty amazing things, raising a family of 5 kids pretty much by herself. And some other circumstances that made things really difficult and challenging for her. And you know, she showed up, and she gave, and then she gave some more, and then she gave some more. And you know what, I'm betting now, looking back, there were some times when my mom was pretty damn tired of giving. And what did she do? She gave. And she loved and she supported, and she's one of my heroes. Martin Luther King is one of my heroes. This is a man who gave and gave and gave. And you know why he's one of my heroes? The thing I really like about him is he was so imperfect. You know? He made a lot of mistakes. He did some things that we might not think of coming from a leader. But he gave anyway. He led anyway. Because he recognized and he understood that he was a human being, living a human life and walking through human challenges, and that the way to heal himself and the way to heal the planet was to give anyway. He's one of my heroes. I like Mahatma Gandhi a lot, too. He was one of my heroes. He is one of my heroes. Powerful man who stood in the truth. And you know what I love about him is he just did the work. Didn't let things like money or other people's ideas of limitation stop him. He just did the work of being peace. It's made a difference in my life to have him as a model. And I have a more recent hero. Who knows who Malala is? Malala, a girl who was shot in the head because she wanted to go to school. And here's what Malala said that makes her one of my heroes. Dear sisters and brothers, she said, I am not against anyone. Neither am I here to speak in terms of personal revenge against the Taliban or any other terrorist group. I am here to speak up for the right of education for every child. I want education for the sons and daughters of all the extremists, especially the Taliban. I do not even hate the Talib who shot me. Even if there is a gun in my hand and he stands in front of me, I would not shoot him. This is the compassion I have learned from Muhammad, the prophet of mercy, Jesus Christ, and Lord Buddha. This is the legacy of change that I have inherited from Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. This is the philosophy of nonviolence that I have learned from Gandhiji, Baka Khan, and Mother Teresa. And this is the forgiveness that I have learned from my mother and father. This is what my soul is telling me. Be peaceful and love everyone. Her heroes have taught her something, haven't they? And she is walking the path of love. And she is giving so richly and so powerfully a girl who's becoming a woman now. It's a beautiful thing to see. She's one of my heroes. When I read these words from Malala, first I went and looked at the video. Go watch her actually speak these words. It's quite moving. I was reminded of something that Ernest Holmes once said. He said, "Find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his own soul, and I will find another Savior, another Jesus, and an exalted human being." Malala is an exalted human being. She is not allowing the burdens of her own soul to tell her how to behave in the world or to be after retribution or to be after something that is not life-affirming or life-giving. She is giving with an intention of changing the world, with the intention of making the world a better place, with an intention of being an agent for a more powerful way of being in our society. She's my hero. Do you have any heroes? Any people who've taught you to live a better life, live more fully? You see, here's what I believe these people have in common, my heroes. I believe they understand that there's only one thing happening. And the one thing that's happening is the infinite life of the infinite one. And that the energy and the power and the grace that is emanating forth from the universe itself is our energy and our power and our grace. And that we are at one with one another. And even with those we cannot see and whose lives we cannot imagine, there is only one thing happening. And we are living and moving and breathing and having our being in the midst of that one thing. And we somehow think we're separate. Our eyes would tell us there's you and me. If we depend on our human senses, we think we are separate. And yet our human senses are not reliable indicators of spiritual truth, are they? And so these people who see and recognize their oneness, they give and they serve humanity from the very heart of God, from the very heart of the awareness of their oneness. You see, all God does is express. All God does is express and express and express, and it expresses through us, and therefore it expresses as us. And when we anchor in love and truth and oneness and unity, that's what can express. And when we anchor in hate and separation and division, that's what expresses. We get to choose. Malala chose. Martin Luther King chose. Gandhi chose. My mom chose over and over and over again to give. You've been given gifts. We've all been given gifts. Will you express those from your heart and from the very heart of God in service to something greater than you are? That's the invitation I put out to you today. That's the invitation that I share from my heart. Because what I know is that the power of giving will transform your life. It's transformed my life. It's transformed countless lives. And all month long, we are talking about the gifts that we bring. Yes? We're talking about the gifts that we bring to the world, and we're talking about the gifts that we bring to our beautiful spiritual center here. And if you've missed the first 2 talks, that's okay. You can go watch them on YouTube. How exciting is that? The first week, we talked about the gift of our presence, just showing up, just being willing to be here and be in spiritual community. It gives us an opportunity to give to you. It gives me a purpose. It gives our center a purpose for being, so that we can care for you, so that we can be a source of your spiritual good. But in order for that to happen, you have to show up. In order for me to live into some of my gifts, you have to show up. So thanks. So you bring the gift of your presence, and last week we talked about you bring the gift of your prayers. We ask you to be in prayer for our community, because we know the power of the word. We know the power of prayer. We know that the word spoken cannot return to us void. We know that when we consciously employ the creative process through the power of prayer, great things happen. And so I invited you last week to pray for unity all week long. How many of you actually did it? Hallelujah. Look at this. Oh, I'm so excited. Because, you see, there's a snowball effect in consciousness, right? The more we practice, the more we grow, the more we collaborate, the more we be present to the greater idea, starts to snowball. So keep that up. First 7 days went pretty good. All right, 7 more. Just give it a try. Pray for us for 7 more days. Just see how that goes. And if you'd like that prayer, you can find that prayer. There's a card out on the welcome table. Our board member can can give you one of those cards, and you can pray that prayer for us this week. And today, we are talking about the gift of your participation. You see, the first week, there's a difference between your presence and your participation, right? Your presence is you just show up, and you're willing to show up. You're willing to be in the room with an open heart. You're in the game. Your presence means the coach put you in. You got it? You're not on the sidelines anymore. Your participation, I'm sorry. You're not on the sidelines anymore. You're actually playing. You're on the field. You're playing. You know, I can't go very far with sports metaphors because I'm not much of a sports person, but you get the idea. And so when we talk about your participation, I'm talking about how do you give here of your time, of your consciousness? How do you serve from the very heart of God? Do you serve as my mom served, as Malala serves, as Gandhi serves, to something greater than you are, in order that you can make a difference right here in your own community? See, this is where we can make a difference, right? I don't know about you. Sometimes I watch the news or I read the paper and I'm like, wow, there's nothing I can do about that. You know what I can do something about? I can do something right here. I can do something about it right here. I can contribute. I can give of my time and my talents and my spiritual gifts to a community that's making a difference in the world. And we are making a difference in the world. We are lifting the collective consciousness with our teachings. We are serving the local community through our monthly service projects. We are serving individuals in our community who are going through stuff because you're willing to give. And imagine if everybody in this room just gave 5% more of their time, of their gifts. Okay, let's not think small. Let's think 25% more of their time and of their gifts from the heart of God, not from the reading. Remember the reading, not from our pain, right? Not, oh God, it's so hard, but Reverend Marla asked me to do it, so I'm around. That will be your baptism, and it may be a baptism of fire. But truly giving from the heart of God, all God does is express. All it does is give. Give as God gives, freely, richly, abundantly, easily. All the resources that we require are already given to us. Can you give in the same way? And can you give as Malala gives? From a place of forgiveness, of understanding, from a place of peace, and from a place of love. You see, giving is the gift that keeps on giving. When we give, we receive not always what we think we're going to receive, right? And we don't give because we're going to receive. We give because God gives. And the magic part of the universe, the beautiful part of the universe is we will receive. So when you give, when you serve from the heart of God, you will learn and grow. You will expand. You will work your stuff. Many years ago now, probably my first time that I actually really threw myself into service to an organization or to another. I chose very wisely, although I had no clue at the time I was choosing that wisely. I did a volunteer training. I began to serve in a domestic violence shelter. And I had an opportunity to learn about the tactics and dynamics of power and control and how all of that works. And I began to realize the ways I was using power and control in my life to manipulate people and circumstances, and I got to work my stuff. And I began to learn how power and control had been used to exploit and abuse me. And I got to stand in my power and say no more. Do you see? And all I did was go volunteer at the local shelter. And 2 years later, I am transformed. My life is transformed. Because when I said yes to serving and serving openly and with a consciousness of love, I was given so many gifts. I was given the gift of myself. I was given the gift of learning more fully who and whose I am and how that's called to express in the world. The gift that keeps on giving. Serving from the heart of God, serving from a sacred place, gave me an opportunity to work my stuff, to know myself more fully. And I'll tell you what, then I started serving in my church. Dang. Opened my heart to a whole realm of spiritual truth and knowing myself more fully. Because guess what? When you're volunteering in your church, you got to be with people. Like, really? And you got to collaborate, and you got to work together, and you got to employ the principles of love and inclusion and grace and giving. You got to do it with all of those things going. And you are called to a higher awareness of the gifts you've been given to express in the world. I strongly encourage you to do that. It is a way to learn and employ and put to work the spiritual principles in your own life. It is the gift that keeps on giving. It connects you with friends and with family. The people with whom I have served, I'm thinking of one who's in this room right now, that I served with 25 years ago, and is one of my deepest connections in my entire life. And had I not served, I wouldn't even have that relationship, and that's so difficult for me to imagine having lived life without that relationship. Being of service is good for us. Builds our confidence. There is absolute evidence that getting out in the world and serving heals depression. It's very clear. It contributes to our happiness. The happiness effect, helping others, kindles happiness. When researchers at the London School of Economics examined the relationship between volunteering and measures of happiness, they found the more people volunteered, the happier they were. The more they volunteered, the happier they were. Compared with people who never volunteered, the odds of being very happy rose 7% among those who volunteer monthly and 12% for people who volunteer every 2 weeks. Among weekly volunteers, 16% felt very happy, a hike in happiness comparable to having an income of $75,000 to $100,000 versus $20,000. Here's my favorite part. Are you ready? Giving to religious organizations had the greatest impact. Giving to the source of your spiritual good has the greatest impact because you're expressing your spiritual gifts. See, this is why I like to think of it as sacred service. I am giving from the very heart of God. Sacred service, I'm giving from a consciousness, a place of knowing that there is only one thing happening. And as I serve you, I serve the very body of God. And my service becomes sacred service. It becomes holy. It becomes consecrated to the greater idea. And by the way, I get happier. Anybody want to get a little bit happier? Giving to your spiritual community had the greatest effect. All because we are giving from that sacred place. We are duplicating the very nature of God. We are saying yes to something greater than we are. Now, there are some things to think about here. Say yes to serving. Say yes to serving from a certain consciousness, from a certain way of being, a knowing that one thing is happening. But then you better be sure and be doing your spiritual practice. Because if we don't do our spiritual practice, time forgets to expand to meet our every need. If we don't do our spiritual practice, we get sucked back into the human ideas of not enough. We get sucked back into the ideas of I'm too busy. We get sucked back into the ideas of, do I have to give some more? But you see, when we do our spiritual practice, it anchors us in that sacred notion of oneness and unity, and then we can continue to serve from that. It's like going to the well of God and being refilled so that we can give even more. And as Becky so beautifully told us in her song this morning, you got to give what you want to receive. How many of you don't have enough time? Give time. How many of you don't have enough love? Give love. We give that which we want to receive, not because we're going to receive it, but because that's the way God gives. Because we give from the very heart of God and with the consciousness of love. So make sure you're staying anchored in your spiritual practice so that you can continue to give from the heart of God instead of put on the blinders and forget. And you know, don't be afraid of your dislike of discomfort. Anybody? I want to be comfortable. How about you? And one of the things about that for me is I almost didn't do the most important service trip of my life, which was a trip to Cambodia to serve in a school. I almost didn't do that trip because I didn't want to be hot and because I'm afraid of bugs. It's really hot there, and they have really big bugs. I think I'll stay home. But you know, I went there to be of service to a greater idea, and I transcended my dislike of discomfort for the sake of being of service to a greater idea. And it transformed me inside. It made me into a new person. It expanded my ideas of what's possible. And so whatever it is that you're like, oh, I can't do that because I might be uncomfortable. Well, yes, you might be. Because I was really hot, and I saw some super big bugs. And because I was available to the greater experience, because I was willing to be uncomfortable for a couple of weeks, I got to see the world through new eyes. I learned about giving from the heart of God, surrendering those fears, surrendering that dislike of discomfort to something greater than I am, recognizing that too is part of the one. Now, you may have noticed as you came in this morning, we got a big, long table out there with lots of folks at it. I want to ask Pat Ford to stand up. Will you stand, please? This is Pat Ford. She's our beloved volunteer coordinator. Give her some love. Pat has given so much since she started here just a few months ago. She's given so much. And she's created this beautiful display and table out there, and she has ensured that it's staffed so there are people who can answer your questions. And she is serving from the heart of God as she holds our sacred service program high and builds and cultivates that. And I invite you to visit her and her lineup of folks out there who are hosting various areas of volunteer opportunity. And I invite you to ask questions and to, most importantly, turn within. In service to the one life, what is mine to do here? What is mine to say yes to so that this center can continue to thrive and so it can continue to grow, so that it can expand, so that it can be more of the great idea that God has for us? How am I called to serve? Because trust me, you are in this room, there is something that is yours to do here. As you say yes to the greater idea and unify with the oneness and remember your heroes. How did they make a difference in your life? How are you called to make a difference now in the lives of others? So shall we seal this message with just an awareness of the oneness that we are. I invite you to bring your attention to your breath and to close your eyes if you wish. And with each and every breath, you feel your heart open more and more fully to the infinite oneness of all life. You hear the words of Malala, be peaceful and love everyone. You hear the words of Ernest Holmes, one person who is for something and against nothing. And you anchor in the awareness of the infinite life, living, moving, and breathing, having its being as you. And as you breathe, you simply allow the infinite mind and heart of God to show you where you are called to serve. In this community and the greater community, where are you called to make a difference? And you recognize and you know in this moment that the consciousness with which you serve is the content of your service. And so you begin to see yourself serving in love. You begin to see yourself serving with grace and power and confidence. You begin to see yourself opening to the lessons of sacred service. You begin to see yourself expanding and growing in your own personal and spiritual evolution. For you are giving from the very heart of God. And with each and every breath, you imagine more fully being of service to something greater than you are. And simply allowing that to be its reward. For God is oh so good. And you are oh so centered in the very heart and mind and body of God. And knowing that you have been transformed, knowing that I have been transformed by the power of this moment, I close this message with a grateful heart, calling it good and very good. And so it is. Amen.